Christos, a todos, Boirun, welcome, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you all here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ethan Marcus. I am the Managing Director of the Sephardic Jewish Brotherhood of America, La Hermandad Sephardic de America, the national umbrella organization for the Ladino-speaking Sephardic communities of the United States, originally founded by Jews from Salonika, Greece, from what's today Thessaloniki. We're so honored and privileged to have our dear friend, Dr. Leon Saltiel, here today to discuss the wonderful new book, Do Not Forget Me, 3 Jewish Mothers Write to Their Sons from the Thessaloniki Ghetto. It's a very special piece of work today that we're very excited to share with really what is the inaugural book launch in this month. Just a reminder, this program is through our wonderful Sephardic Digital Academy, a national online database where we have classes on Sephardic culture, Torah, halakha, history, Ladino language, cooking, and so much more. If you have not checked out our website or other programs, please do so. You can reach our website at sephardicbrotherhood.com/Sephardic Digital Academy. We have a host of new programs coming up for the month of September. Just a little about our speaker today. Dr. Leon Saltiel is representative at UN Geneva and UNESCO and coordinator on countering anti-Semitism for the World Jewish Congress. He holds a PhD in contemporary Greek history from the University of Macedonia in Thessaloniki, Greece, and has been a postdoctoral researcher at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. His publications include The Holocaust in Thessaloniki, Reactions to the Anti-Jewish Persecution, 1942-1943, and Do Not Forget Me, 3 Jewish Mothers Write to Their Sons from the Ghetto of Thessaloniki. Leon has more than 15 years of experience working on human rights issues from around the world, the majority of which was working with the United Nations in Geneva. He was a Fulbright Scholar at Georgetown University, where he earned a master's degree in foreign service. He has received numerous fellowships from, among others, the Foundation pour la Mémoire de la Shoah, German Marshall Fund, Yad Vashem, and the Institute for the Study of Diplomacy. He is a member of the Central Board of the Jewish Communities of Greece and of the Greek delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Without further ado, Dr. Saltiel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Ethan. It's a great pleasure and honor to be with you, especially an organization funded by Salonicans who migrated to the US. So I'm happy that I'm speaking to you and to, I hope, many of their descendants today.
Definitely you are, and it's really such an honor and a privilege to, 3, 4, 5 generations since the migration over 100 years ago, we're really reconnecting with our mother community and sister communities around the world, and really grateful to have you as a partner in that. So thank you so much, Dr. Saltiel. So I want to jump in first with a couple of questions we have prepared, and then the second half of the program, we'll take Q&A from the audience. And if you have any questions in the process, please feel free to enter into the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So Dr. Saltiel, maybe you can give us a little bit about your personal background and history. What got you interested in the study of Holocaust studies and human rights, and specifically about Thessaloniki, which is, of course, your hometown?
So thank you. Indeed, I was born and raised in Thessaloniki, and all my family lives there. And you can see my parents on the video as well. They are here with us today. And I was always interested in the Holocaust. Unfortunately, in Salonika, we experienced more than 90% of the population was decimated during the Holocaust. And the Jewish community always felt the trauma. It was always present. The Holocaust commemorations were always very touching. And for me, I always wanted to look a bit deeper. And when I started looking at some archival material, I saw that there was more space for a more in-depth research. So I embarked on a PhD to actually map what was happening in the city during the deportations of the Jews. How were the city authorities reacting? How were the people reacting? One of the ways I tried to do that is by finding material that was contemporaneous to the events. I didn't want to work with material or testimonies that were done after the events. I wanted to see what people were thinking and witnessing during these dramatic events. And that was my PhD. It was published a couple of years ago by Routledge. We can speak about it later. And one of the spin-off projects of this book was the book that we are presenting today for the first time, which is letters that I found in family archives and the Jewish Museum of Athens, of Greece in Athens, which is letters that were written during this period. And because of their amazing content and very important information they contain, this became a separate publication, which we today present the English version. The Greek one came out in 2018.
So now let's jump a little bit into the book, Do Not Forget Me. This book has been a long time coming, and it's something that you've been working on since you actually mentioned your PhD. What was the first moment when you realized from the work you were doing that this book was not only necessary, but critical to advanced Holocaust studies from Greece?
So, as I said, I was looking for eyewitness accounts, and I found references to the existence of these letters. And the references in the bibliography were just very short lines. So I had no clue about what these letters were about. And when I asked to see more, I was surprised that we don't speak about 1 or 2 letters or a couple of paragraphs. We speak about around 50 letters total from the 3 mothers. And their names are Sarina Saltiel, Matilda Baruch, and Neama Kazes. And I'm also very happy that members of their families participate in the call today. It's very touching for me. And they also gave me additional material since the Greek version was published in 2018. So I found this wealth of information, this correspondence between mothers and sons, where they describe the daily life in the ghetto. The letters start around the summer of 1942, and they end a few days prior to their deportation from Salonika. And all 3 mothers were unfortunately victims of the Holocaust. But through this correspondence between the sons, it's so touching, it's so emotional, it's so unique, and yet it also gives a lot of information about the period, about what they knew, what they were feeling, their daily lives, their routine, what they were eating, how they're spending their time, their neighbors, because they write what's happening to their uncles, the cousins, the neighbors, their friends, the community. And you really get, and all 3 mothers, they don't know each other. They live in different areas of the city. So you get a very good overview, and they write parallel. So it's actually an amazing find of having 3 parallel stories that fit a very common pattern, mothers writing to their sons in the same city, the same period. So it gives a very unique also multi-perspectiveness of these dramatic events. So when I realized the wealth of this material and information, I proceeded to the publication of the letters in Greek originally, because I want to touch the Greek audience. I must say that I've been overwhelmed with how this book was received in Greece. I would say that maybe the pinnacle of this was a documentary that was made for a cultural festival of Thessaloniki a year ago, which also featured the president of Greece, who read some of these letters, which was, the first of time a head of state participating in the documentary, reading letters of these mothers, and you can see the president very touched when she reads these letters. And of course, they've been used by schools, by academics, by dance projects, by other plays and movies. So it has been very very positive, the response. Now this English version comes out to reach out to the audience which cannot read Greek. And I hope that this will actually bring the book to the international public. And I know a French version is overdue, because it's important to know that these letters are originally written in French. So and with the translation, not only you lose the French language and sort of like the way the mothers write in French, but also you leave a lot of the Ladino in Greek that's used in the letters. I've tried to keep some of this language by using footnotes in the text, but of course it's lost in the translation. So hopefully a French version can also be more authentic towards the original text.
So tell me, from your research and these letters, which is an incredible find, what were some of the most, I would say, surprising things you discovered from these letters? I mean, that's been 50, 60, you mentioned. Kind of what were the most shocking things that you were not expecting that kind of really potentially changed some preconceived notions about the Holocaust in Saloniki?
Well, it sort of like it helps crystallize some of the ideas you had of how the community operated, how the community was structured, how the people behaved. For example, it's clear that the community is not very religious. It's very traditional. They keep the holidays, but they are not very religious. So you can see that, for example, coming in the letters. Or you see how very tightly the community is. I mean, they all know the cousins, the uncles, they're all in touch. They all stick together. They all try to spend these difficult times together. On the other hand, many of them do have relations with the Greek Christian neighbors. So it's not a complete disconnect from the city. So they do engage and they do participate in the life at large of the city. The other thing that I think is more interesting in this sense is the knowledge of what was happening to them. So it's clear that they had no explicit idea of where they were going. Okay, we speak about the Holocaust today. We know they all headed to Auschwitz, where they were probably gassed upon arrival. That they didn't know. However, from the way they were put in the ghetto, the way the whole system worked there, the oppression, the depression, the lack of food, the restrictions, the fact that they took their homes and their businesses and they had to move, the yellow star, and especially as the first trains leave Salonika in very, very bad circumstances, 60 people in a wagon, no food, no water, no sanitation, kids, mothers, older people, that they know, and they report it to the children. And towards the last letters, there's no doubt that they're going to their deaths. Even if they don't know where they are going, they know where they are going. And it's very interesting to see that, because that actually helps us realize what the people knew in the city at the time. You didn't know that the Holocaust was taking place, but they knew that these people were not going to survive much longer based on what they were witnessing, based on what they were seeing, based on what they were deducting. And initially the mothers, they try to reassure the children. They try to sort of like tone down the anti-Jewish measures. They try to give them some hope. They try to tell them how they were spending their days, just to keep them, content. But towards the end, when they realize where they are going, the letters are becoming very dramatic. And because it comes, all this, the story of the Holocaust of the Jews of Salonika, you see through the prism of the mother to son correspondence, which, the mother is very holy, it's a symbol of how can I say, of safety, of femininity, of the house, of the home, of the family. And when you see the Holocaust through that prism of the mother writing to her beloved son, it really adds another layer to the Holocaust history. And that's why it makes the letters very emotional and sentimental. And I think that's the great value in this publication.
Now, maybe you can describe a little bit some of the contents of the letters. I know one thing that was still controversial to this day is the role the communal leadership, particularly the chief rabbi and the lay leadership, took in relations with the Nazi occupation and the trains to Auschwitz. Was there commentary on this? Was there any inputs on this? What was the mindset of the three mothers to their children about this kind of issue?
It's interesting. The mothers don't mention anything about that. The whole way the community leadership is dealing with this issue of the negotiations. Some of these developments are done in a reporting fashion. This happened, but without many details. But there's no criticism or commentary about how they are behaving, which is also interesting in its own merit. I mean, this can also be something to be discussed further among experts. The other thing is there's also no bad feelings towards the Germans or towards fellow Greeks. In fact, one of the mothers, if I remember correctly, says we want to bless even our enemies. They are so magnanimous that they are not even complaining about or having, speaking about reprisals or, we are going to punish them or, some mothers got a lot of help from Christian neighbors, and they do write to their sons and say, we received a lot of help from the neighbors, and please make it as a mission of your life to honor them, because they helped us in the worst of our times. Other neighbors don't stand up to the highest levels. Some others write that I asked them for help or for some food or to hide something, and they told me no. So you have both. You have both. So it's very interesting to see what they write and what they don't write. I think they censor themselves, not so much to censor themselves from the censorship, the military censorship that existed, but also to censor what they write to their sons, to their children, because I don't think they want to distress them too much. And they use codes. Towards the end, they don't use specific names. They say the person who lives next to us, or the friend who you sent us, or the person who you know. So they use a lot of names like this to speak to the children.
I'm curious, maybe you can mention, for context, where the mothers were in relation to their children during the war, and what was the children experience during the war and the correspondence that they sent back? Yes,
so it's a good question, and it's an important question to frame where these letters are located. So Salonika, in the period of, the deportations, which is February, March 1943, going on until April, May 1943, it's under German occupation. The Germans control the city, and they are imposing the anti-Semitic measures. The sons, for different reasons, they are located in Athens. Athens at the time is under the Italian occupation, and the Italians don't want to implement the anti-Jewish measures that their German allies asked them to do. So the Jews in Athens at this period are relatively have an easy time, relatively. They suffer, there is shortage of food, but there is no organized anti-Semitic measures. There is when Italy capitulates and Germany takes over most of Greece. That happens after September 1943. But at the time, the Greece is divided within Athens between the Italian and the German occupation zones. Of course, there is also the Bulgarian part on Eastern Macedonia and Thrace, but this is not part of our discussion today. Unfortunately, we don't have the letters of the sons that survived, because they were sent to Salonika. They may have lost after the homes were taken from the families. The mothers could have even taken the letters with them to the camps. We never know. The sons survived. They had their families. And thanks to their families and to the grandchildren and great-grandchildren or nephews and nieces that are alive today, I was able to recuperate information about the family and also additional material, photographs and additional letters that I did not have in the initial publication. That is also now part of the English version.
Maybe you can describe a little bit how the mothers write about their experiences in the ghetto, how there were food shortages and other things, but what was the Nazi kind of impact on them while they were in the ghetto for almost a year?
So, as I say, in the beginning, the mothers, in the beginning, the Jews of Salonika suffer as much as the population of the city. There is no specific anti-Semitic measure from the Germans until the Liberty Square events, which most of you must be aware of, that starts on July 11, 1942. Now, the mothers don't write about these events specifically. However, they write about their implications. So, for example, as you know, the Jews were gathered in Liberty Square and they were sent for slave labor. The community paid a ransom, what we call a ransom, to the Germans, and the forced laborers were liberated. So the mothers speak about that Uncle Shmuel came back from the work. He's in a very bad state. The employees of the father came back. They cannot work. They're very sick. So you hear about that, but it doesn't say why they left or what happened to them. But you hear the results. So it's a lot of this writing, which is not very explicit at the beginning. However, after they're put in the ghetto, which is around February 1943, until, and the letters go on until end of March, beginning of April, then they really, the letters really open up. They're becoming very emotional. In fact, one of the mothers tells to the children, I said, I think you're not informed about what's happening to us. I asked you to get informed, ask around, because what we're living is dramatic. And the mothers, when they write the letters, they say, I'm writing this letter with tears coming down from my eyes. My son, I'll never see you again. You are the only thing that I'm thinking about. And they're becoming very emotional. They describe the lack of food. They describe how people are selling their possessions. They describe how they are preparing for the voyage, the regulations that they have to comply with. And I think its uniqueness compared to other books of testimony or similar books is that it's not written by survivors after the events. It's written during the events. So they don't know what's happening to them, and they write what's happening to them every couple of days, every few days when they send a letter. And the letter, as they write it, it's very clear. They don't check it again, they don't correct it, they don't edit it. It's exactly what they write to the children. They put in the envelope and they send, because they don't know if they are going to be there another day or so. So these letters were never meant to be published. These letters were never meant to be a literary text. This is intimate correspondence between mother and son, it's at its own value as it comes in this volume from the three mothers together.
You mentioned the fact that these were very intimate letters. Often when biographies or autobiographies or historical works are published, particularly with important correspondence, we often deal with very intimate subjects that can often be quite personal. Were there any in particular that you actually struggled with? Because often this can be an issue for an author. On the one hand, you want to be historically accurate. On the other hand, you want to respect the privacy of the subject. So indeed, there are intimate correspondence. I mean, first of all, it's a lot mothers' advice to the children. Jewish mothers, Greek mothers. So imagine Greek Jewish mothers, how, let's say, micromanaging to the children there are. And then they give them advice, how to study French, or how to finish university, or how to be good in business. And towards the end, they actually give them marital advice, because they know that they won't be there for this big day. And they try to give them all their lives sort of like thoughts into these letters before they take the train to Auschwitz. A mother describes, the two mothers are widows, so there's no family. But Sarina Saltiel, whose letters covers a larger period, her husband, her parents, in-laws, her extended family is present in the letters a lot. And you can see the father is very depressed. And she complains to her son that I have to do everything myself. Your father is good for nothing, which also shows you, how people are dealing with these situations. The only thing I had to change is a mention. Sarina Saltiel is very friendly to the classmates of her son who live in Salonika, and many of them help her. They come to her house, she cooks for them, she gives them gifts for their holidays. And one of them she sees in the street with a singer. And she's very concerned about how he's messing up with the wrong crowd. And she's writing that, and his name I changed because I didn't want his family to know that, their father during the war, he was in the bad company. So that's the only actual name that I changed. The rest, even if it's intimate, I think it kept the originality of the letters, and also the families didn't really have an issue with this information becoming public. I'm curious what is going on right now. What do the mothers write about the husbands, and if they had other children in Salonika at the time that their experience as well?
So the two children are already in Athens. The two children of the two mothers. The children of Neamakazes, in fact, the one was in Athens and the second one left during the correspondence. So the letters start with the son being with the mother, and then the son eventually shows up in Athens and becomes also part of the receiver of the letters. And it's clear that the son escaped around beginning of March, which is also very interesting. The mother also tried to escape. In the letters, she's of course older, less able to move in a clandestine way. She's trying to get, she's of Italian origin, and she's trying to get documents from the Italian consulate so she can avoid the deportation. Unfortunately, she wasn't successful. The consul tried to help, but the Germans wouldn't accept her documents, and she couldn't go back to Athens with her children. Other mother is also the other mother, Matilda Baruch. She tries to get married to an individual who is of Italian nationality to avoid the deportation as well. And she writes that for him, and he's a very old guy, there are already 7 people trying to get married to him, 7 women, to escape the deportation. So you have a lot of these anecdotes that are very original, and they really give you the sense of what people are trying to do during those times.
Just to let you know, I'm about to open up the floor to questions. So if you do have any questions, please enter them into the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. We already have a number in the chat, so we'll get to them in a moment. Last question for me. Can you maybe comment a little bit about why you think the mothers chose French, particularly as the language of correspondence, when their native language is Ladino and the language of the state then was Greek?
Well, it's interesting as well. And, you know, maybe these things we have to say from the beginning to clarify any questions to our audience. Ladino is the language of Judeo-Spanish, is the language of intimate correspondence in the family, but it's mostly oral. As you know, Ladino can be written with Hebrew letters or with Rashi or with Latin letters, but hasn't been really codified as grammar. So they do speak Ladino, but they not write so much Ladino. French is they go to French schools. So all of them went to French schools, they got French education. And French is the language of correspondence and of literature. So this is the language, even for non-Jewish families, at the time of the interwar period, French is the language they use for family correspondence. You may see a lot of postcards coming from Salonika from around the First World War, and they are written in French. French is really the language of correspondence and of commercial correspondence, of family correspondence. When the things become very difficult for them in terms of their livelihood during the war, the mothers revert to Judeo-Spanish, especially Matilda Baruch. I think you can see also a little bit the level of education. The ones with a bit less higher level of education, they revert to Judeo-Spanish a lot, and they write in Ladino to the children because it's very more direct for them and more emotional. French is still a little bit austere for them and remote. But nevertheless, French is the language of correspondence. This is the language they learned at school. This is the language they lead the literature. This is the language they do all the commercial correspondence. So this is the language they opt for which is also an interesting thing in itself. The fact that they use French, how many Greek words they use, how many Turkish words they use, how many Spanish words they use, and also the Greek expressions that they have integrated, meaning the French, if you read the French, for a French person, many expressions they don't understand because it's Greek expressions translated into French. So it's also interesting to see that even their French is influenced by their environment. It's not, you know, Voltaire's French. It's the French of Salonika, of the French with Turkish words, with Greek words, with Hebrew words, with Spanish words, you know, which is with words that relate to the German occupation. They use the words that are, you know, are used by the authorities at the time, and you can see that in the letters.
We have some great questions here from the chat. I'll start out from the top. What was the average age of the mothers at the time?
So the three mothers, it's in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we have, we also have different perspectives based on the age. Of course, everything is displayed in detail in the book, when they were born, what age they were during the war, etc.
Do the mothers have any other children besides the three boys?
So, as I said, the two mothers had one child. The third mother had two children, one of which escapes during the war. So I had two sons, but that's all. They didn't have. Actually, one mother has a daughter, but she's not located in Thessaloniki at the time. She was in France and then eventually went to Argentina. So the family that was in Thessaloniki was just the son in Athens.
Maybe you can comment a little bit why French schools were so popular among the Jewish class, the Jewish community in Thessaloniki.
Well, that's also easy, and I should have mentioned it, I guess, before. The big sort of like educational revolution in Salonika at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, was thanks to the Alliance Israélite Universelle, which was a French-based Jewish institution that built schools in the whole of the Mediterranean to educate the Jews of the East or the Orient. So this network of the Alliance schools brought the French language within the Jewish community, and then since then, French is becoming the main language of the community. In terms, again, in correspondence and business, Ladino is remaining the colloquial language in the household, but Ladino is also losing its importance, and you can see it in other works as well. Don't forget that Greek is also becoming a language of choice, especially for the sons. The sons, it's interesting, the one I told you where the one son escapes and joins the brother during these events. There is also correspondence between the two brothers that's contained in this correspondence, and they write in French, but they use a lot of Greek, not written in Latin script, but in Greek script. So you can see that they are very integrated. They probably learned Greek at school. Some of them served in the army. So for them, Greek is also, they're very fluent in Greek as well.
Now, do any of the letters at all reference, in passing or otherwise, at the time, the chief rabbi of Salonika and his instructions to the community? One person mentions that he understands that many blame him for the Jews leaving the city.
So as I said, there was no mention of the community leadership. There's no mention of Rabbi Koretz. There's no mention of any of the measures of what the community is doing. And again, we can discuss why there's no mention. We can have different hypotheses, but I think those letters open up new areas of research. I got also a couple of questions in my chat. People write to me just to briefly answer. The letters are written mostly, as I said, in French, in Latin script. So not solitreo, not in Hebrew letters, but they're written in French in Latin script. That's why I said I also look forward to a French edition soon. I know the book is out in hardcover. We'll give the details at the end of the talk. There's a 50% discount offered by the publisher on this occasion, and hopefully, I think because it's academic presses, it's published by an academic publishing house, a very respectable academic house, Berkeley Books, based in London and New York. Usually, a year later, the paperback, a more affordable paperback, comes out. But I think with a 50% discount, the book is pretty reasonable for people who want to purchase it. And also there is an e-version available.
A couple other questions here. From the information collected, did the mothers not feel comfortable using Greek as the vernacular?
I don't think the mothers learned Greek at school. And the Greek words they use or the Greek expressions is often with Latin script. I think I would assume that's an assumption that the level of the Greek is conversational Greek for the street of the neighbors, but it's not Greek to write letters. The sons are a lot more fluent in Greek, and you can see that.
Someone has a very interesting insight over here. They remember from your first book that the Red Cross had sort of an ambivalent role in Thessaloniki. They both provided help, but exonerated some of the Nazis after the war. Is there any reference to the Red Cross in your new book? Do the mothers talk about help from the outside, or are there any visits to the ghettos that they note? And lastly, can you elaborate on this and how you view humanitarian aid and the role of the Red Cross during the Holocaust?
Yeah, again, there is no mention. You know, this high politics. That's why I say it's another topic of discussion. I don't think the mothers were part of the people in the know, let's say. Okay, they are not participating. They are not in the community. They are not part of the elders. They are not part of the people who are meeting or trying to do to help alleviate some of the suffering or negotiate with the Germans. There are efforts in my first book, based on my PhD. I try to detail a lot of the rescue efforts or the rescue attempts done by the Jews of Salonika to save the community. The mothers are not part of that group. There is also a lot of gossip and rumor. So there is also a lot of things that circulates, and they write them down. So you have the rumors that are circulating. You can read them. The deportation stopped for a few days, so people think they stopped. The negotiations were successful, or Turkey enters the war, or something's happened. So there is this false sense of safety that you can see. Now the general question of the role of the Red Cross. Again, I have a whole chapter in my first book where I try to detail from the archives what they found. The Red Cross delegate in Salonika actually tried to help a lot. Because of that, the Nazis expelled him from the city. They kicked him out, and the response from Geneva was actually not very forthcoming. But not just for Salonika, but for the whole of Europe. I mean, the role of the Red Cross in general in terms of the Holocaust is not very positive. In fact, at the Red Cross Museum, which is not very far away from where I'm talking to you today, there is a whole section about the failure of the Red Cross to save the Jews during the Holocaust. But at the same time, they praise the very few Red Cross delegates, such as the one in Salonika, who actually tried to help.
Was there any mention or reference to Jewish collaborators in the correspondence?
No, there's no mention. As I say, there's mention of neighbors, there's a lot of mentions of family members, of what happens to them, of their employees, of people they know, people they meet, neighbors, Christian neighbors, Jewish neighbors, friends, acquaintances, but not a lot of, there's no Jewish traitors or things like that, no.
Do we have any sense that whether the correspondence was read by the Nazis for screening?
So there are no marks on the letters that would denote any censorship. Having said that, as I said, I think the mothers self-censor themselves. In the case of Niama Kazes, Marie Kazes, who is the niece and she's with us, I see her on the video, she gave me additional material, which includes some of the actual envelopes. And in one of them, which is also included in the book, there is a stamp of the Italian censorship. Now, so we know that at least some of them went through censorship, if not all. The mothers would complain that the letters, or the sons would write back, and the mothers would complain that not all the letters reached their sons. So definitely there is a delay in the post office. Now, are these letters lost because of the conditions of the time? Are these letters censored and destroyed by the censorship because they included material they didn't want the censors to be transmitted? It's not clear. It's not clear, but definitely there is censorship. There are letters lost, and the mothers censor themselves. So, interestingly enough, and we should say that too, there is a telephone, and the mothers at some points do speak on the telephone with their sons. But this correspondence is very difficult and it's very short. But they do speak with them on the telephone in rare occasions.
An interesting question here. Dr. Devanara, a colleague of yours and fellow researcher in the Greek and Sephardic studies, has expressed the position that the Greek Jews did not develop a very strong identity and sentiment towards feeling Greek and like the ethno nationality until World War II and the Holocaust. Do you agree with this position? Do you disagree? What is your sentiment, particularly about the Jews of Thessalonica, and what you can gauge from these correspondence about how they identify with the Greek state?
I think, you know, in terms of identity or history, you always have to see sort of like the historians say the longue durée, sort of like in a larger period a bit. It's not specifically to a year, but let's see things in a bit of a more space of time. So let me be a bit more specific. Salonika is integrated into the Greek state in 1912. Okay, this is when the Greek army enters into the city. The letters are 1942. So this is 30 years after the Jews of Salonika became officially Greek citizens. 30 years is one generation. So the Jews of Salonika want to integrate, and David Nahr and others are describing these efforts for them to integrate. They go to Greek schools, they participate in Greek life. Don't forget, all institutions in the city now are not anymore communal, they are mixed. The Chamber of Commerce, the Bar Association, the City Council, they are Jews who are very active in the Chamber of Commerce or even elected on the City Council, etc., etc. And let's not forget, when the Italians declared the war against Greece, the Jews enlist and fight in great numbers, and many are dead or injured, as their other Christian compatriots. So there is no sense that they are less patriotic or more patriotic than the rest of the population. And there are many examples of Jews who fought and died and who praised their motherland. But again, we only speak of a period of 30 years. And the mothers were born before Salonika was Greek. So the Jews of Thessalonica, unfortunately, did not have the chance to prove how Greek they were, because the generation that actually was born as a Greek citizen, was educated in Greek schools, and fought in the Greek army, they were sent to Auschwitz and died there. So unfortunately, we're never able to see how this patriotism developed, because this generation and the whole community was virtually lost in 1943.
Interesting question here. You reference the writings as mostly from the perspective of mothers, but is there a possibility that we can look at these letters as from women that have a life outside the house and family identity? And what do these letters really tell us about these women as women?
100%. And I'm sorry for not being clear and only calling them mothers. Definitely, you have this unique women's perspective. Of course, for me, the mothers is more, because they write to the son, but definitely these are women. These are proud women. These are women that are asked to take leadership roles in very difficult and dangerous situations. As I said, the two mothers are widows and the children are not with them. So you see less the role in the household. But Sarina Saltiel, she's there. As I said, her in-laws are alive, her own parents, her husband, an extended family. And you can see the leadership position that she has taken for herself, not only cooking and maintaining the household, but also they are forced, for example, to move to the ghetto. She's doing all the moves. She has to arrange to find the house, to clean the house, to pack everything, to transport everything. She has to cook. She has to keep the family happy. She has to entertain the family. She even has to take care for their health. They go visit the mother's relatives or friends who are sick. They try to cheer them up. They try to help them. So you can see all these networks of self-help that are developing, but definitely the women who are often the forgotten heroes of history are having now the prominent role, and all this narration is done through their eyes. So I think that's another element that is so unique in this volume.
Do the women at all mention the destruction of the Jewish cemetery in their letters?
They don't. It's also something that I try to look for. They don't mention that. As I say, there are two periods in these letters, as I said, before the Ghetto period and after the Ghetto period. And when they're not in the Ghetto period, I think they're trying to smooth a little bit the situation. They don't want the children to be alarmed. They don't want the children to be sad. They don't want them to be worried. When they go to the ghetto, when they have to put the yellow star, when the deportation starts, they know that their final days are coming. They do say that in their letters. They do write that in their letters. And then the narration becomes completely different. So there they describe in detail all the measures and what they have to go through. But in the first period, as I say, other than circumstantial information, like the uncle returned in a very bad state, the employees of the father came back, you don't have a lot of that information. Maybe they were also afraid of censorship. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't include it.
Can you speak a little about the children post-war, after they survived, after they were able to get through the war? What happened to them? Where did they go? Did they stay in Greece? Did they become active in the Jewish communities themselves? What were their lives like post-war?
Yeah, interesting. So the of all the children, so we're speaking about 4 sons, as I said. Okay, 2 have 1 children, and Nama Kazes has 2 children, one of which flees as she writes the letters. The 3 of the 4 children got married with Christian Greek women. In fact, the 2 of them got baptized to Christianity. I think the 3rd one did not get baptized. So only 1 actually with a Jewish family after the war. His family is still, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are still alive in Athens. They live in Athens. But they all became very prominent. And you can see that I also tried to include that in the book, not only write about the background of the family before the war and what happens to them during the war, but also what happens to them after the war. And they all became very prominent in business, in the letters, in arts, really becoming very prominent individuals. And just to give you an example, Maurice Saltiel, who is the recipient of the letters of Sarina Saltiel, and I should also say it has nothing to do with me, it's just a similar last name, but there are many Saltiels in Salonika even today. He was very key in creating many of the Salonika cultural institutions that we have today. And in the music hall of the new music hall of Salonika, there is a room named after him. And when we presented the book in Salonika, we chose to present it in the book that bears the name, his name, which is also he's the recipient of the letter. So by highlighting these letters, we also, I think, pay homage to the children who survived the war and who in their own way also prospered and contributed to the well-being of not only Salonika, but the whole of Greece and beyond.
By the way, I'll mention we have many also Saltiels who are members of the Sephardic Jewish part of the United States. So you may have some cousins even who in the United States. So inshallah, you should come and visit for sure. Wonderful. Last question here. Where can we find the book?
So thank you. So let me now put my PowerPoint, which I created, and I apologize for doing it formally, but I think it's important so people can have the information. I hope everybody can see it. So this is the book we are presenting today with the title. If you go to the site of Berkham Books and you use the discount code SAL059, you can get 50% off. As I said, it's a hardcover and just came out of the press. And as I said, also for the Greek edition, parts of the profits of the book will be donated to the Jewish Museum, to the Holocaust Museum of Salonika, that's being now being constructed or being, the final steps towards construction, in the name of the three mothers. Because, I'm the editor of the book, I'm not the author of the book. I just transmit their own words, and I want in their own name that the donation is made through the sales of the book to the Jewish Museum. And of course, there is also my PhD, which is also a bit of a more heavy reading with a lot of footnotes and information, but you can delve deeper into some of the issues that we discussed here. These you can also buy on the website of Routledge Publishing House, again, another prominent academic publisher. And the paperback, a more affordable paperback, is coming out in November. So whoever is interested, you can check the website or be in touch with me or Ethan, and we'll let you know when the paperback will be out, and probably there will also be a discount code for the paperback version. And I will stop sharing the screen now.
And just a reference to everybody as well, thank you so much, Dr. Saltiel, for this wonderful book talk. This class will be available on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sephardic Brotherhood, and shortly on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sephardic Brotherhood, along with all our other classes, our previous book talks, and everything under the sun. So please make sure to check out those references for previous classes on Ladino and Sephardic history and book talks and Holocaust programs we've done before. We really love it. I want to take a moment and thank Dr. Saltiel so much for his time and really for his spectacular work in advocating for our community. It really means so much to us to have such a wonderful person out there.
Ethan, it was a great pleasure and honor, and I really, I'm very happy that you're the first discussion we're having to launch this book. Again, paying homage to the Sephardic Jews from Salonika who migrated to the US, and to their descendants who you very eloquently and actively represent today in the United States. And as it's a English-speaking edition, I think this should be the primary audience of this book. That's why I'm very happy and honored that we had this event today under your auspices, and I thank you very much.
And I want to wish everyone a happy, healthy, sweet, and safe New Year on behalf of the Sephardic Jewish Brotherhood of America.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. Bye-bye to everybody.
So much.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you.